Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and today I thought we'd talk a little bit about trimming decks, and I'll do a little walkthrough at the end, and I'm going to trim my Jolanda Tarot. So if you want to skip on to the end of that, I will put the timestamp below. So let's talk about some of the reasons why we may want to remove borders on our cards. Sometimes the cards, like as in the case of a lot of the old low Scarabeo decks, they have just multiple titles on the cards, which are really redundant, and on a really busy deck like something like the Crystal Tarot, it can kind of be distracting from the artwork. Sometimes the publishers put a little copyright on the front of the card images, and maybe we just don't like the aesthetic of that, so we want to trim off the sides and get rid of that altogether. Really, it probably doesn't need to be in there anyway. Many times we want to trim a deck because it's big and bulky and hard to work with, and for me that's the case for a lot of the decks that I trim, is mostly for the physical practicalities of being able to work with a deck in a better way. Sometimes we just want to create a borderless edition of our deck, so we'll trim the borders off to give it that borderless look. Like in this particular instance, this is the Sacred Travelers, and I've turned it into a square deck. And sometimes we trim simply for the aesthetics of it, because once we free that artwork, it looks gorgeous. This is, I think, a prime example of how gorgeous a deck can look when it's been trimmed. This had big, huge purple borders on it and titles, and I just think trimming it really freed it up. Everybody has different tastes and different reasons why, but the important thing to remember is to do what feels right for you for your deck. Now let's take a look at the different kind of trimmers that you can use. So we're just going to real quickly go over these. This is a guillotine trimmer, and it uses the little arm. This works really great with thicker cardstock as long as you have a sharp blade or a newer blade. These do wear down after a while, so you do need to replace them. The benefit to this one that I have found is it just creates a really clean cut, and this is actually my preferred method of trimming. The only drawbacks really to this is that this little guard slides around a little bit, so you just need to press down, and the arm again slides around a little bit, so you just need to be careful. Other than that, it works really great. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to line up the cards, but you know, like I said, you get the hang of it. Definitely my preferred method because it creates a much cleaner cut. The slide trimmer I know is a favorite for a lot of people, and it does have this great guide in here, which it creates a really nice clean line for you to work with. But in my experience, this trimmer, rather than really cutting the cards, it kind of like tears them. So when I've compared cards cut with this slide trimmer to cards cut with my guillotine, the cards that were cut with the guillotine had a nice smooth edge on them, whereas the cards that were cut on the slide trimmer definitely had a bit of a rough edge to them. Again, personal preference. I do not personally like the way this cuts my cards, so I only use this for my paper crafts. And then of course you have old-fashioned scissors. A great pair of scissors will cut through just about any kind of cardstock, so this is a wonderful, quick, cheap, and easy way to trim a deck. I just recommend that if you're going to use scissors, that you have a pair that you dedicate solely to trimming your decks, because cutting other materials with it can dull the blade, but it can also create little nicks in the blade that can leave imperfections on your cards. So if you're going to use scissors, just have a dedicated pair. Scissors work really well for cutting through just about anything. The biggest drawbacks for them is you do have to be able to cut a straight line, and for me, I do not have a steady enough hand to do that, so that's not something that I usually turn to. It is great for like if you just need to clean up an edge or something, works great for that. So again, you have pretty much three different options. You have scissors, you have a guillotine, and you have a slide. If you're going to be trimming a bunch of decks, I highly recommend that you just go ahead and invest in a good trimmer. If you're only gonna do one, maybe two decks, then a pair of scissors is probably all you need. So once you've got all your cards trimmed, the next thing you're gonna wanna do is round the corners. And that is what gives it this nice finished look with these nice rounded edges. Now to do that, you will use a corner trimmer. You can also use a pair of scissors. There is nothing wrong with that. If you've got a steady hand and you are more than confident about it, go for it. I, however, most of us use a corner rounder to do this. Now, but you have a couple different options when it comes to corner rounders, and I'm gonna start with the one that I want you to avoid at all costs. I'm being a little dramatic here. This is the Fisker's Corner Rounder, and this thing is, I just have to say, it's garbage. It chews up the corners, it makes notches instead of actually cutting clear corners. If you don't get the card 100% in there, you're gonna get a weird notch in your card, and it eats cards. That's what it does. I'm not the first person to say that, probably won't be the last, so just learn by my mistakes, learn from my mistakes, and just don't do this one. Your next options for about the same price as this this card eater is the EDSA Corner Rounder, and this one I think is the medium, the 5mm, and this is a great little trimmer. I've used it on many of my decks. You just stick the card in there, you punch it down, and you've got your corner. I did use this one for quite a while before I finally was turned on to this one, which is the Sunstar Katamaro Pro. And this now is my preferred corner rounder. It's what I use on all my decks. It has the it has small, medium, and large setting. The small is a 3mm, the medium is a 5mm, and it says the large is a 8 to 10mm. So this one creates great corners. It's crisp, it's clear, it works every time. I mean, it's got a great bottom. I've still got corners in there. Holds quite a bit. This, if you have the time and the funds to get this one, it's really, I don't think it's really that expensive, but I know it did take several weeks to get to me here in the States. This one I ordered on Amazon and had it like 2-day Prime. But this one's totally worth the wait. Just that's what I would highly recommend if you're going to go ahead and get a corner rounder. In the meantime, you know, while you're waiting for this one, if you're just anxious to get going, I think this one was like $8-10 on Amazon. Much better than stopping by your local Walmart and picking up this thing, because this thing has a like 80% chance of eating your cards, and it's just not worth it. Okay, so we are going to do a little walkthrough as I trim my Jolanda Tarot. So let's get started. To start off, I'm actually just gonna trim the left and right sides, and I'm gonna do the whole deck, those two sides first, and then I'm gonna see how I like it with these two sides gone and the number and the title at the bottom. I have a feeling that I'm probably not gonna like it, but better safe than sorry, because once I cut it all, I'm done. There's no going back. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started and cut off those two sides, and then we'll come back and reevaluate where we are at that point. So now I'm gonna do this side, and it takes a little bit because you're gonna have to just kind of go card by card for a little while and see exactly where you need to cut. Now see, this deck is gonna get really small once it's trimmed. The backs don't look too terribly bad to start with, and I'm just gonna go ahead and keep at it and try to basically do my best, because that's really all you can do. And that one actually came out way better. And now that I'm like 5-6 cards in, I'm getting a little bit better idea of where my line needs to be. That one still got some purple on it. Sliver or so of purple really doesn't bother me too much. I just don't want all of this purple, because I really do. I love this deck. I think the artwork is gorgeous. Love the colors on it, but those purple borders just don't do it any favors. In fact, this is one of the few decks that I think that the purple, or that the huge borders and the extra titles, the multiple languages, really does a disservice to this deck. And just, you know, in taking a look at what I've got going so far, like, I'm here on Justice, so I'm 8, well, plus the Fool, so 9 cards in. And I can already tell you that in looking at this, like, this is, I'm not wild about this. The white on the top and bottoms and the back. And this, I think, would have worked better leaving the purple on the top and bottom had these corners not been rounded as well. And so I think with the rounded corners on there, it just looks really weird. So I'm gonna finish up the majors here. And then I will give you a break so you don't have to watch me sit here and cut and ramble. So there's the majors. And yeah, I can tell by just looking at it right here that I am pretty sure the top and bottom is gonna go, but I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of it first just to make sure. I don't know if you can see there when I put the dark background against the dark background, you can see I still have some of that lavender border. I may go back and try to clean it up on some of them, but I don't want to take too much off. So I'm gonna just finish up what I'm doing first. Then I may come back and do some cleanup on them. So I'm gonna give you a break. I'm gonna finish up the sides on these and then I'll be back with you in just a moment. Okay, I'm back and I have trimmed the sides off the entire deck. I have decided after doing all of this that I'm going to go ahead and trim the tops and bottoms off and go ahead and make this deck completely borderless. But I just wanted you to see that doing it step by step like this allows you to really take some time and look at, you know, the cards as you're going as a progression. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean those up a little bit, and then I'm going to trim the tops and bottoms, and then we'll come back and take a look at the finished trimmed product, and then we will round the corners. So I will be back in just a bit. Alrighty, I am back and I have finished trimming all of the sides off of my little Jolanda Tarot. So that whole process to take the top and bottoms off, and then I also went back through and cleaned up some of the sides where the purple I'd left a little bit of purple, and you can see, like, I don't know if you can see that, look at all my little stringies. Like, here's my pile. So at this point, I am about an hour into this process. Now, I do recommend, I have to say, taking breaks in between, because sometimes you can get into a rhythm and then it's like you're not quite as careful. And that's when mistakes tend to happen, I think, is when you kind of get into that lull, into that rhythm. And it is very mindful and is very meditative in one respect, which I actually really enjoy. But it can also be really easy to just get to chopping because you're in that routine and that rhythm, and sometimes mistakes happen. So even though it can be a really meditative process, I think it's a really good idea to make it, to do it in smaller chunks. You know, maybe the way I do it is I kind of do the majors, and then I do each suit one at a time, and I just take a short break in between. And that's kind of how I go about it, to make sure that I don't slip into that kind of meditative lull that you, this kind of rhythm that you get. And I only say that, and this is one of the few instances that I would say like a meditative state is actually not great, because you need to be very aware when you're doing this. So I think with this deck, I am going to use the small rounder, and just because like this, it's really small now. It is definitely like pocket sized. So I can show you here, this is just the extra card of the Centennial. Like you can see the difference, like how small it really did get. This is obviously the Centennial tin, the mini version, and you can see that it's actually, you know, it's about the same width, a little bit more narrow, and about the same height. So it is pretty much a mini deck now, which is fine, and I'm okay with that. But I just wanted to show you so that you are, you know, can see the huge difference that it can make when you trim a deck. So I'm just gonna take it, and I have, this is the small, and I'm just gonna pop it in here, and I'm just gonna round the corners. Now I'm gonna start with the small one and make sure that that's really what I want. And when you're using the corner punch, it's really important to make sure that you get it all the way in there and that your sides are pressed up against those guides. Otherwise you'll get a wonky corner. So there we go, that's all 4 of them, and I think I like the small. And the great thing is that when I took off the top and bottoms, I got rid of the extra. I even got rid of the copyright that was down at the bottom, so that is fabulous. And there we have a cute little mini deck now. Let me just do a couple more here. And again, this is a process that, you know, it takes a little while, and your hand may get sore. Mine usually does. So again, this is usually another process that I will do a stack at a time, take a little break, and then come back to it. So I'm gonna finish up corner rounding these, and then we will take a look at the final product. All right, back again for one last time. I have corner rounded all of the 78 cards, and I wanna say that took me about 15 minutes, so I am about an hour and a half start to finish. So I have all of the majors, and then all of the wands. Don't they look beautiful trimmed? I love it. Huge difference from when we had that huge border on it. And the cups, love this card, are gorgeous. I have to say, like, they look so much better, the swords here, without that border on it. That purple border, I think I said it before, it just really did a disservice to these cards. It was really distracted from this gorgeous artwork. And the pentacles. So put them all together here. And it really is kind of like a pocket size or mini deck. You can see, I don't know if you can see, I mean, there is some slight variations in the sizes because again, I didn't measure, but they are nice and smooth, and the backs look pretty good. I am going to edge this deck, but that's a video for another time. But look how gorgeous. See, now this is a deck that I can see myself using. I mean, I love the artwork. I've been drawn to the artwork for a long time. Was finally able to get my hands on a copy, and pretty much all of the ones I've seen online have been, for the most part, trimmed. And now I can see why, because they are gorgeous trimmed. So there you go. So thank you for sticking with me on this probably very long expedition of trimming a deck. I hope you found it both informative and entertaining, and I look forward to seeing you again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.